Yeah, I mean, it's really demanding that, we connect both the worlds at this point. And there's a lot of physical work that's actually being done right now where many people are really just being called on their words. And that's why my favorite saying now is let my actions reflect my words. So everything that I've said for this last 6 or 7 years, let me see the full manifestation of those words come into fruition. And that's what, I'm working on and focusing my energy and my beam into. And so now, we're kind of out of the course part of our existence, and we're now more into the being and the action. So it's like, okay, you learned enough about yourself. Now it's time for you to accept it and to go out into the world as that amazing being that you've been reading about and studying about when you look at your ancestors, or, you want to understand the story of who you are and how you got here. But I just really wanted to say, yes, this is something that, as we become more awake to what's actually happening in the reality, we'll also learn equally to appreciate those who are stepping into their roles and they're doing what they need to do. And then, of course, if we trust ourselves, we only need to look right in front of us to determine exactly what message is coming across and, and what we need to be paying attention to. And so it allows us to absorb the bit of every single moment that we're experiencing here on this. Wow. I mean, I think that we can ignore life a little bit because it's just such an enigma, meaning that there's so many unknowns and so many questions. We know that we can't ingest the complete thing all in one moment, maybe, but in between time, there's this process of us becoming more aware. And so today, I'm going to love to get into some dynamic tools that we can all begin to use to start to increase our qualities and of being a creator, to allow what we create to fully reflect who we are, and to open up the throughputs. Like, if you just have a single bus, let's say in a computer, only so much data and so much accessibility can come down that bus. So when we open up the bus, then there's more to tune into and tap into. And we all face, some challenges, obviously, but we know now we're getting more weathered in this. But some of those challenges really steer around when you do something as unique as create conscious content and you're not going with the norm. This means that you do find challenges at time in finding templates, because, everyone uses templates. Everyone uses, advice. Everyone goes to certain things that they see and say, hey, you know what? I like that. That's how our whole existence is based. So anyone who believes that, they shouldn't be taking inspiration from others, or they don't need mentors, and that's all a part of just the whole ego trip, and you eventually get over it, because even us taking a breath means that we've come into agreement with a massive, powerful energy, and it's working with us. And that's just in a breath. But, it's so much in a breath, right? So it's the same thing with this awakened creation, is starting to actually say, okay, here, what are my tools? What's close enough to what I'm doing that I can see going on and just out, in the industry, if you may, so that I can understand things like creating funnels. So I can understand things like the importance of spreading your reach, and not just imagining that your message is going to spread its reach without you incorporating things like Facebook Pixel and all these things that seem so contrary to maybe it's quote unquote the conscious mind at times, like, hey, why should I market? But at the same time, it actually is showing a vulnerability that we have to kind of putting ourselves right back into the same straitjacket that we just got out of with sometimes dogmatic traditions and rigid belief systems. You have to be very creative at what you're doing, but you also have to trust yourself to know that what you're doing is to ultimately bring people to bettering themselves. And so we have a slew of people that are endless to talk about that don't care anything about that, and they use these channels to reach the world and to reach, anyone who's holding certain devices. So in tense, we have to realize that, okay, well, if we had enough people that we have a lot of people doing great things, but if we could get what they're doing out in different formats, not just, hey, come and listen to them, but also come and join them. Or, here's a seminar where we're bringing all of them together, and here's something that they all co-created together. So when we start to think of it that way, now we're getting into the full capability of what it's like to truly be who we are. And that's the most interesting part about all this, is that I've come to learn that there is really nothing that we don't have within truly. And this means that it's all just ready to be unpacked for you. And it's there. Like I spent years and years of my life proving that it was there and trying to disprove, all of our power and all of our true capabilities, just because, there's a saying that if you're raised by chickens, and you're an eagle, then there's going to be a lot that you don't know that you can do. And this is what I feel like about humanity is that, we've grown up into this very controlled society that has dictated exactly what the range of what we're capable of doing truly is. And the truth is that that's not anywhere near close to all of our options. So, right. And that is the definition. If we looked up the definition last time, some people expect a full on UFO to land over the building and, and then how's everything going to be the same after that? Like, it doesn't even matter what was really discussed in the meeting. Everything is going to be changed after that. So of course people would love that, but truly that's like, I call it like seeing the ants and missing the elephants. Right. And because what we're really in front of, when someone comes to deliver a message is really a powerhouse a real power plant in itself that we have the opportunity to either plug ourselves into and get ready to receive, or completely go monkey mind and start going into all these, dualistic thoughts and judgments about that person, right? Or in that space. Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, something that you mentioned about, somewhat of the anxiety when taking on very large projects. Everyone has to know that there was nobody who didn't have that, anything that was going to be major, have that point where they felt like backpedaling even especially let's think about when someone's going to make $1 billion deal. It's not like a light matter. So of course, through that whole process, there's almost going to be something installed that keeps saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't go through this. Hey, maybe we shouldn't go on with this. Imagine the risk, and all of that. And what I found is that when you tap into this zone, the all knowing, as I call it, well, actually, it's not me calling it. It's the truth. So it's what everyone can refer to, but this all knowing zone actually puts us into this position of actually entering the ultimate relaxation. And this is very interesting because, we've studied a lot, but we also have to sometimes go back to what we studied and see what was really going on. And one of the big things that was really going on in a lot of the most powerful people that were changing things and guiding things, from positive to a negative level, it's just a blueprint, is this extreme relaxation when carrying out these kind of actions and activities that have these extremely high energetic magnitudes to them. And the purpose for that obviously is that when you become, like, Bruce said, be the water, my friend, when you become porous, right? Like, so how we exist, let me just give some backdrop here. How we exist as beings is very similar to the atoms and particles and molecules, et cetera, cells. And all those things that I even just named are not visible by the naked eye. So they're extremely small, but they're still measurable. So if you can imagine that the reality then has this filter or strainer, and as you attempt to pass through into certain levels of things, if you have too much, what I guess we can call, some people would call it awareness. It's like just being so in the body and who you are and all of the shit dialed in, excuse my language, all at that one moment, you just become a fat particle. Versus when you don't pass through the membrane, versus when you relax, you actually dissolve a lot of your ego. Really, that's what happens. Like, you don't have much of an identity. And because you don't have this identity, but not in the way that we understand identity, the language is very confusing, but because you don't have this identity or signature, then it can't detect you in many ways. I'll just say it like that. It can't detect that you're there. And in that, you pass out of the membrane of this reality through that membrane. And then you enter into the reality of where things are really taking place first. I call it the back room. This is very similar to even now that I have these dreams. And certain dreams that I don't, the dreams are like fully animated. They're their own thing. So I just kind of get entertained with them by the night. And I don't really harp on things unless there's sometimes these other dreams that come across and I'm like, okay, this one was crystal and there was nothing that I had to do to make it crystal. So what is it saying? So even recently I had one of those only like 2 or 3 days ago. And the dream was just off the chain. Like with all this stuff, I'm like, man, this is immense. But every time I have one of those dreams, the next day something happens. But I never even remember. I just kind of like mark the dream like, okay, wow, that was a crazy dream. So then I go throughout the day and then something will occur. And in this case, I went through the strongest activation to date yesterday night where I stayed fully activated for 15 minutes, which was immense, for those who've been through those experiences. But previous to that, what I'm getting to here is I had this dream that night that was equally as revealing about just the whole landscape of, the occult world. And so what I'm saying is that it came first in the dream, but I don't live in the dream. I live in this physical reality per se. But this shows once again that actually wherever the dreams are, whatever that field is, that whatever that it's made out of, which is sound and light, is a space that if we learn how to get into that space, then we can actually begin to control what's happening here in this reality from that space. And of course, we do that actually naturally. So there's a lot of things that we're doing that anyway, but to have more control over it per se, or to be more aware of it, I guess that's the best way to put it, in order to how to move things around in order to create certain changes, or at least at minimum, know what's actually coming and being able to benefit from what's coming. See, a lot of times when people look at what's coming, they often try to determine what's coming based on what negative is going to happen. Like, is something bad going to happen that I can maybe avert? Mm-hmm. Like, when am I going to die? This is the kind of ideas of the future. When is the world going to be over? This is what people tend to tap the future knowledge database for. However, if you can switch that stage of thought and start to look at it as actually the more that I know about what's actually going to take place, the more I can prepare to receive all the energy and all of the essence of those moments. Now I'm tapping into that quantum field. Yeah. I mean, there's no one size fits all. Obviously we're in being unique beings. It actually presents some challenges. It's so funny because every single thing that we value also has its equally other side of devalue, I guess you would say. And so basically, because everyone's unique, it's like, let's say, for instance, with the energy centers that move through a person's body, you can have a general idea of where those energy centers are, like, meridians and chakra points and acupuncture points. Yes. However, you have to also be able to see energy to fully perform the work, because everyone's energy centers are in different places, right? Wow. So what we've done is we've created a blueprint, and that's of course what the university introduces. But this blueprint, it starts to address just the primary fields, mentally, spiritually, and physically, to work with, to give a person options of working with things that if you get stuck on it physically, then maybe you could move to mental and tackle it. So there's a lot of things that we discovered. Like for me personally, I like to really attack the body. And I say it that way is because there's always a war going on in your own universe. That's what united and verse means, united in conflict, right? And we have to learn how to take that conflict, which actually produces power, produces energy, it even produces passions, to take those two opposing poles and begin to become that balance for them. Like you have the Ina and the Pingala and the Sushumna, and then the middle channel is responsible and necessary because it has to transfer all those energies back and forth to another. So it's not ever saying that, hey, one is actually better than the other. So I find that one of the biggest techniques that people can begin to adapt to filling their own self, to fill their own power, is to really start working with learning how to not just alkalize the body, but also how to really get rid of certain kinds of bacteria that create habits, that create thoughts that we're having. So this is basically conductivity 101, how to get conductive. And then once you're conductive, because these principles are like, it's not something that has to be proven. It's a maxim. This is empirical knowledge. So if you're not highly conductive because you're more on the acidic side, then it means that top area of like your antenna system cannot really function properly. Now your lower areas, which are really based on the acidic side of things, will function well. But notice that a battery, like the one in the car, it has acids and alkalines in it. So what happens is that, if we've gone over that kind of knowledge before, like even stuff from the periodic table, and we've kind of frowned on that knowledge, like, oh my goodness, I don't want to learn that. That class is boring. Many of us have now need to start going back into that knowledge with our spiritual minds and start, reading between the lines and attaching things to their appropriate categories. So that way we can benefit fully from the knowledge of light, which is what I've been calling what governs the fiery worlds, or the phi-based worlds, or what I know to be the fire bodies, as the human appears as a flaming fire on the astral plane when you see them. And that's the secret to a lot of the occult systems, is to understand that kind of knowledge. And of course, fire is very curvy. Even languages such as Arabic and ancient Hebrew were built on the flame and that spiral. And so we see that force. And then when you check out light always moves in these straight line beams, like lasers. Like there's literally all hard edges and it's very straight. So right there you have the two components, which is my new series of Fire and Light, of actually what is really going on in the world. So if I was to ever create a soap opera, I would call it Fire and Light because you would see these immense dramatic relationships play out. But the interesting part is that even in the indigenous cultures, like in the ancient times, the women were weaving most of the time. And what some of the particle physicists and things have learned now, those old ladies already knew, as the warped, which was what went, vertically on the weave, and the wept, what went parallel or horizontal on the weave. And what this means is that one are the humans and the other one are the connections that weave us all together. And that the loom itself was the cosmos, and the colors in the loom represented different states of thought and different modes of feeling. So again, when we just for one moment, just imagine that for some reason, someone doesn't already have all the knowledge just because they don't have a Hadron Collider or access to some massive guru or whatever. We would be wrong with those judgments because people have come to the realization of the matrix from different means. And now it's time for us to say, okay, that's your station. It's great. And what other people who have also are closer to coming into it that way, they can learn from you based on where you've gone from there. Like that's why you have mentors. And these are like echoes in many cases. These are like how you would see something smear or something leave a path or a groove. We get a chance to watch those paths and those grooves that are sometimes in this strange forest that we're in, but we know that it's been traveled before. So this gives us confidence that when we complete that path, that there will be some fulfillment in the end. And that's what, this is the grand experience that we're in now. And I'm just so glad that a lot of people are just getting into that part of it and not getting too distracted by, the system that we're still rapidly working on repairing. Most definitely. I was just thinking about that yesterday though, but there's just so many ways. Some people have done it actually through Tantra. Some people have done it through DMT. Totally. Some people have actually done it through sorrow. And some never stop doing it. Like, you get people still that come into the world and they can see the other plane already. So there was nothing to start to try to gain again. So, and this is again, it's something that we now need to learn how to be appreciative of, but we are coming out of, this ultra dogmatic system that, it really frowns on such things. And this generation has really been trained that way. And even though they don't want to live that way, they do that automatically because it's, it's been in the TV. It was in Disney. It's in all the programming. So they have to deprogram that. And it rears its nasty head all the time, though. It's like balance is not something that you just obtain and then it's over with. It's something that you have to keep all the time. So you can find, if you get off your balance, and the moon and the sun and all that, it's a roller coaster. So you got to constantly readjust yourself. But you can find at times going back into the old ways of thinking and being when you're trying to judge someone for maybe how they're saying things. Like overall now it's because you're still would be using kind of like the brain, which is like the key to judging it. That's why it has those two poles and then the corpus callosum in the middle. But if you go into a whole nother state of yourself, a state that's much more balanced, it's not saying that you agree with what everyone is saying, but it's really easy for you to feel what is the lesson, because there will always be one, even even if it's, hey, did you notice that everyone is saying that same thing? What is the root to that? So there's something to learn and to gain there, but we also have to be willing to catch that morsel. You know, sometimes I have to listen to things for 3 hours of just grueling. I know this already. And then one little morsel will come out and I'll be like in this eureka moment. And I think that that's a deep diver. That's a miner. That's a person who is used to the process of how to extract and do synthesis in a reality. And again, we're using, chemical terms, but notice how that in this reality that if you juice or if you synthesize or if you refine pretty much anything in this reality, you get such a pure component of energy. And again, speaking of energy, since everything is energy, this means that there's actually no lack of energy. And this has become my major epiphany lately about how there's this constant persuasion that we're running out. And where does that actually come from? Concepts of time, concepts of oil, anything that's supposedly finite that is going to run out. But the truth is it all connects to energy, even the energy moving in our body. So if we start believing that there's a limited amount of energy, then we start going down that slippery slope. But once we start to truly embody what's going on, that, hey, you know, there's a way more energy than you think. There's not a scarcity here. There's no reason for someone to even be a vampire as if they would run out of energy. In fact, there's so much energy, you can't even take it all in if we just blow out of the whole proton shell or whatever. So what I'm saying is, yeah, exactly. So that's again, separating the concepts that have been taught in the reality about energy, and then just look at the truth about energy, since everything is energy, and then using your common sense. Hey, if everything's energy, meaning wind, sun, there's even static electricity in the air. There's charged ions in the air. So all these ways to harvest energy, if you may, it just means that there's really no scarcity of that.
I know, and you know,
yeah.
yes, yes,
Well,
we're like,
the last thing was, and then just connecting that to, once again, then that means that all you need is sound and light to start anything. You actually don't need money to start things. You need sound and light. And you can get sounds and light from your own dreams. And so this is how, like, for instance, like some people, they, you know, if you train yourself, anything that you're doing on a certain period, let's say 22 days, 23 days, it does indeed start forming a habit. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to do music, but you were already conscious, if you want to use that term, meaning you already had your, you know, thing going on with your dreams and looking into yourself deeper. And if you started studying music for 22 days, what would start to happen is you would start dreaming about music. And then all of a sudden you'd start hearing sounds and songs that would just be so catchy and so connected, because you would be in your ultimate relaxed state creating, which is your sleep. You know, if you have control over your sleep, I will put that there. Exactly. So what happens then is that I'm sure that many people who have created the greatest music that we've heard have pulled that from their dream, because you have access to sound in your dream. And then because you can see your dreams, you have access to the light. And so this is, again, starting to reinforce again to yourself that, hey, you know, I have every single thing that I need. In fact, I have it in like unlimited quantity, really, not just me believing in that, but energy is all around me. And the only thing I need to know how to do is how to harvest that energy. And this is not a thing that you're depending on something else, because you're always harvesting energy. It actually leaves you in a position to not be as dependent on many of the areas that we're getting energy from now. Exactly. Well, and then everyone should know, you know, you're doing this already, but you need to reel it in. I don't, again, like to use the word like control, but it's just that that's how we exist. These mechanics of what we're talking about, we're already doing it. But the thing is that we're not conscious that we're doing it. We don't really understand the mechanics of how it works because we won't believe in it. Not because we need to go and study it about how it works. That helps, but if you don't, you can study it all you want, but if you don't believe in it, like think about that. You know, there's a lot of classes out there to go and do Reiki and all that kind of stuff, but who would study something like that, but not believe in it? Because if they didn't believe in it, it would never work. And so that's where I was saying about there's this point that you get to, and that's where the door of the all knowing is, that when you accept it. It's like when you accept who you are, like if you've done a lot of research about your ancestors, and then every time you keep searching, and this is not saying stop searching, but listen to what I'm saying. Every time you keep searching, you're literally sending this message out that's saying, I don't know who they are. And I don't know my connection to them. And the reason why is if I ask you, where is the tissue? It means that I don't know where the tissue is. So every time I pick up a book and I say, who were my ancestors? That means I don't know who my ancestors are. So it's not to bag on anyone, but it's just saying this is the action that you're subconsciously programming to yourself. So after you've done that for, let's say 3-4 years, you've read about, depends on, what your racial profile is, but, you may have read about the Druids and you may have read about the Kemetans. Then you may have even read and figured out that the Kemetans were the Druids. And then so after you've connected all that, now you've gone down the complete king's list and you've got all the netters laid out and, you have all the saints there and then the angels lined up to their corresponding days. At a certain point, it has to click for you that, wait a minute, what I'm writing about and what I'm studying is about me, but I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it from outside of me. I'm not being it. And the issue with that is that you can never summon the level of confidence and faith to pull off the full miracle. Because this would be like a king that wakes up or a queen that wakes up every single morning and questions why they're king and queen. And they have to imagine how horrible it would be. So you'd stare in the mirror like, so how did I get here again? And, so why am I king? And then you would walk out. And if you carried yourself that way, none of the people that were depending on you, none of the things that you needed to do, none of that could even happen because you would be so unsure of yourself. It would be so noticeable by everyone. Like, hey, I don't think that should be the king. So what I'm saying is that kings and queens, and we're just using this as an archetypical idea, kings and queens don't move with the level of insurity. What they do is they're fully confident about what's going on and what they're about and who they are. They embody that. So this is the next stage for many people is to say, you know what? Okay, close the book. I am the ancestor. Now I'm going to live in this power. And they'll find that their confidence will rapidly begin to increase. This confidence has nothing to do with ego. It's more like the pride that you see within your own species and within the development of your own self. And then that starts to really increase, your overall acceptability of the experience. And then once that's like knocking down the giant though. There's other things smaller things you can start with. But if you can get that one together, then you start tapping into, okay, well, so I'm already this. So then you start conserving a lot of energy because a lot of things that you keep looking back into and keep questioning, those just fall down like dominoes. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm that too. And I understand that too. And that's what gets you closer to this action. And this action comes with so much power and confidence. Like if we just study just simple psychology, we'll find that those who are sure about what they're talking about, even if it's not true, they can persuade others that are not as sure about themselves and not as sure about what's going on because what they're projecting is a dominant frequency that says, you know what? I believe in this. So a big part of this adapting to the energy that we have access to is saying, okay, I believe who I am. And now I'm going to move with that energy. And then when you go and do something, this is how, you knock down Goliaths. When you go and do something that's huge, you start to really be able to right away get the wheels rolling rather than starting to see all this turbulence that starts to make you second guess, if you even should be doing that at all. And if you have the ability to do it. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess, in strictest terms, I would say that knowledge is the door and experience is walking through it. So, knowledge can only give you an idea of the terrain. It's just basically like the map, but it's nothing like being on the ground. The only experience can actually put you on directly into whatever it is that you've been studying. And it's true that, I guess, awakening obviously comes in stages. And so this means that also, these experiences with the infinite come in stages. Like last night was the highest stage that I reached. And it was quite terrifying for 5 minutes until I just realized that I should stop trying to imagine that I'm going to come back and just live at where I am. Well, I mean, like I said, for the first 5 minutes, it was it was terrifying. And, and this is just to be candid. In the world of the adept, often it has these kind of things to it. To tell someone that, hey, you're never going to go and do anything and it's all going to be great. It's just being a liar. There's certain things that you have to gain. And when you were in the village setting, let's say that these were like the rites of passages that the elders would be taking you through. And since the elders are not there, something invisible, I guess, has to take you through it if you're willing. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to go through it in some way, shape, or form. And it comes when you're proactive about it, it doesn't come in a way where it surprises you. It just becomes the next phase that you reach. So what happened for me this time was, and just not to get into detail because it was a rather lengthy session, but we perfected the formula. And the formula for, just that to be used as a term is basically to be able to go into the high vibration on cue. Now, we've been into the high vibration several times. There's different things that can cause one to go into the high vibration, from breathing to certain elements, etc. But it's still it's such an unresearched field for public knowledge. There's a lot of masters that are out there and there's groups that practice certain things, but generally they are like monks. They don't say anything to anyone. And so trying to bridge these worlds to explain to people, hey, this is how I got in. Because just like what we were talking about earlier today, there's not just one way in. And so this is the big thing. So it's like each person, just getting to who they kind of gravitate and like the most and feel comfortable with the most, and then saying, well, what method do you use? So I used a device that we have and we've carried for a while, and we actually don't carry it too much now because of, just other reasons, but it's called a chi booster. And what this does is it moves your feet. You kind of put your feet inside of it and it just rocks your feet back, left and right at a specific frequency. And this frequency is the same frequency that fish move in. So at a certain point, what starts to happen is your whole body gets kind of synchronized into this left, right movement. And for what I witnessed is you can now become more perceptive of actually when you really relaxed, not fake relaxing. There's this whole thing that we do even when we're laying down in the bed. And because we have so many muscles that, even how your head may be, you're not completely resting on your pillow. You're still kind of tensed up. So the only time that we completely relaxed, and that's if then, is when we're asleep. So this was an attempt to induce a total relaxation without going to sleep. And also the chi booster does what it does. It boosts the chi in your body because it's basically waving the kundalini from the base of the body up to the top of the body. So this is not rocket science. But what happens is we had our catalyst. And so after I went through this process, which was not my first time actually using that device, but the first time I used that device, there was other things going on in that session. So I never was able to crack into how vital it was to cause the phenomena that occurred later. So what occurred is that I was on the device for about 15 minutes. I got past the monkey mind, which was actually just saying, hey, why don't you just go sit down? This is not working. It was better sitting down. And then I had another thing come on my mind, say, hey, never listen to your first mind because it's always second guessing things. Just hold out for a moment and be patient and let's see what's going to happen. I mean, we're not in a rush here. And so once, it cut off because it has like an auto timer, then there was a feeling of a large amount of chi in the body, which is what happens after the chi booster. But of course, we had the catalyst. So this was very equivalent to when you throw a match on top of what I would say is a lighter fluid. And then all of a sudden, all the kundalini ignites. And so at that point, because I had a friend in the room with me and I had kind of tasked him to get on the chi booster because I was like, hey, this chi booster is excellent, man. This is immense. This whole relaxation. I think we've tapped into something. You go ahead and try it. And then I'm going to, play around with these Vajras, which, we had gotten some Vajra rods, off of this one site. And so I had kind of again, I administered my catalyst and then I had taken my Vajras and put them in my hand. But at that point, I was already somehow way over my head in the energy. And this is also, there's a calibration here. So I don't want to like make it to people like it's so difficult, but we're deep into fringe. Like I've been into fringe for 4 years. So because that's the only way you can kind of isolate certain phenomena. So there's another characteristic in this room, just so I don't omit anything for somebody who's trying to replicate this experience in the future. In the room, there is a arc in the room, meaning that this room is not like a square room. It has like a cathedral kind of arc, but it's circular. And the interesting thing about these rooms, and this is not a mystical phenomenon, but it does cause some very mystical things. It's one of the things is that when you're standing in the room and you're talking, you can hear what you're saying in your own head. And there's actually a place in Memphis that is the same way. Like you step on this peg that's in the ground, like a peg from like a train track, like what do they call that? Jesus, the word escaping me right now. But you step on that and then you say something and you can hear it in your head. And I actually have visited another person's house where they built a room that was circular like that, or cathedral kind of certain arc in the degree in the room. But also below that room, they had built a wine cellar. And this caused the phenomena even more in that room. So if there's like a base to it, like kind of like the pyramids, like the pyramid has that area up top and then there's a floor there and then now there's an area in the bottom. So that whole thing, it does something. And that's why I always say, hey, if the matrix is a complete illusion, then certain anomalies like this wouldn't exist. There would be no definite mechanics, but something about the arc that's in this roof causes this phenomenon to where you hear your voice in your head. So the reason why
they have it in the Pantheon in Rome too. There's certain architectural wonders that have it.
Exactly. So that's what it is. So, the place that I'm in now, they built some parts of the house like that, 2 rooms mainly. So one of the rooms we do these journeys in. So long story short, what I know happened is somehow we got the whole room to vibrate on this frequency. So that way the whole everything was just vibrating on the same frequency. So when I went in, it was more than just my frequency going on. It was every single thing was all in synchronization. And this caused just an energy field that never wavered versus normally when we use the catalyst, you go up and, you poke your head out of the reality for a moment and then you come back down. But in this case, I went up and I didn't come back down. And in the process of me trying to figure out when I was going to come back down, that was where things kind of got a little terrifying. And it was because I was literally like, okay, I'm already over the peak. And then so I start, doing like, what I do. I try to say, I'm James Bomar, and I try to go into this whole thing with myself to snatch my identity. And it was funny because I had this other voice say, hey, it's too late for all of that. So it was just like, I literally had to sit in this 5 minutes of this period. And then at a certain point, I said, you know what? I'm just going to, I guess, need to accept that I'm going to be like this. And then I noticed around me, there wasn't really anything to actually be afraid of. Now you're talking to someone who's been in 100 and something times. So this kind of lets you know it's degrees to this kind of thing of accepting your own power at this magnitude, because this magnitude is, if there's anything to see, it has to kind of be brought to you in a very, it's a procedure, and we all are going through this in certain ways. And so it's just because there's no place to go and get it done. Like we're not going to go to Delphi. We're not going to go to Egypt. And then we're just going to stand in line somewhere and they go, okay, window number 2 now. It doesn't work like that. It's like invisible college, right? So it's only going to take you through the procedures as you're, going through your progress. So this was my time now to see what it's like to be fully activated for 15 minutes. And with no wavering or feeling like you're even coming down, and then having to accept that you actually have now gone to the Godhead state. And see, the interesting thing is I was still in my room. I was in my sanctuary basically, but I'm sure like the last time that I started feeling that kind of energy and I was able to get myself out of it, I was out in the jungle. And I had tapped into the waterfall frequency and it started doing that same thing. It was taking me up higher and higher and more than I was comfortable with going. And at a certain point, my vision, like what you were seeing, was you see all the plants and all the stuff that's there in the jungle just merging toward you. And it's actually just going to go inside of you. And so I know for sure that this is also, for a real shaman, this is what they go through. They actually take in nature completely and they go through a full integration. So after I didn't allow the full integration to take place, that takes time to be able to go to that point. So, so this is what we're talking about. This is, why I know a lot of things. Cause, remember, this is not my first rodeo, and why I'm able to confirm certain things, because I don't just do that. There's a lot of people, they just get into, these journeys, and they don't learn how to connect what they're experiencing in the journey and ground it, which is what the physical reality truly is. It's an anchor. And that's why the anchor is the ancient symbol of the goddess. And that's the anchor in the chasm or the abyss. It's the only place it's one of the places that's stable, right? So this anchoring process is necessary. It's a beautiful, thing that we have if we learn what to do with it in its true purpose. So yeah, I know that was a long way of explaining something, but yeah, I mean, and that's, the interesting thing is, again, it's still so adept what we're talking about, because, we're just handling it in a light way. And that's great too. Because, we're also literally elaborating on the whole process. That's the most arcane secret in the planet, which is, what goes on, when you get out of the body, what goes on if you're still in the body, but you're on a high frequency. Like, these are the real details that people, I believe, have come into this experience for at a certain point. And for sure. That's what I'm here for. I'm kind of the crash dummy on the astral plane, but you can learn a lot from a dummy. But the thing is that, the truth also is that, I was told this actually in the beginning. So it's interesting how you have to just be in that right position and be prepared. So that's why, one of my teachers used to say, you're not available, Sevan. Like, I'm trying to tell you something and you're not available. So when you become available, then I'll explain it to you. And what that means is that if you have a lot of resistance naturally, if you're hanging on a person's every single statement and then you're just judging that means that you're not available. You actually are not setting yourself to receive. You're setting yourself to give output, right? And so, I was told in the beginning that you just need to relax, right? And I just processed that statement in a totally different way. I processed that statement as that I needed to stop the website, that I needed to stop what I was doing as far as giving people information, that what I was trying to pursue didn't need this much vigor. And it's just, that's the drawback of the English language, is because we have a definition. Each of us have a definition for a word, and that definition is not always the same. So what those masters were trying to tell me when they said, hey, you need to relax. The reason why I learned how to accomplish this power that I have that you see is because I was capable of extreme relaxation. And then because I couldn't process that, because I didn't have that experience yet, it laid itself as a gem that was still covered in rough stone, that later on I needed to realize, oh my goodness, that's what they're saying. Like, if I'm tensed up, the energy can't even flow completely through me anyway. And then on top of that, when I'm squeezing that little pipe with my tensity in my tension, I'm only allowing a certain amount of energy to get through. And then that amount of energy that I'm allowing to get through, I'm regulating it. I'm controlling it. And so I control with fear. And then when I'm controlling it, it's not allowing it to, not allowing me to see what it truly is. So I'm only left with this experience that is something that is not what I wanted and not as pleasing, but the adept will go back again. So what happens at a certain point is you realize that, there's other things like your environment, your mind, your intentions, all those other things that weigh equally as heavy to what this journey or what this experience is really going to be about, and whether you really even crack through. It's not so much as whether someone told you and you heard it on an interview and now eureka, you got it. It's really about saying, okay, well, whatever I am is going to equal what I receive. And then starting to work on yourself to receive the greatest by becoming the greatest in your own spectrum, not through the judge's spectrum, not through the accolades that are received in the reality, none of that stuff, but just by your own benchmark. Because notice how, if I was an angel before, and I'm doing what I'm doing now, for one person, they could say, wow, this dude is really, really activated and ascended. But for another person that maybe knows that history, they would say, man, he de-evolved. How did that happen? So what I'm getting to here is that nobody can truly tell you whether you're progressing or digressing if they don't know where you came from before. So if we're constantly looking at people around us to determine and get the thumbs up that, hey, you're doing well, that's the worst place to look, because they don't even know where you came from initially. They wouldn't know where you did what you were really about. And then even deeper than that, many of us don't know what we were about. Like, we're on this massive grab for basically getting our DNA reactivated, and again, learning what the ego can do while, spending a lifetime with a bunch of chickens. So this is the time. This is the time that we're doing that. But it's important to adapt to that, to not look at this as just entertainment and look at this as just something that, okay, that's a good thing today. I learned that. And, it's just like a robotic way of getting into things. It's take the essence of what's being delivered, because there's something very important about why you're receiving this essence right now. And then take this now as the only time that you need. That's how I push power into the scenario. Like, for me, I don't need any more lives. I have no interest in really coming back, and I'm not afraid of death at all. And it's just because whatever it is whatever it's going to be, because I'm going to go full magnitude through all of it, and I never will end. And then when you go with that, it creates a certain field around you, versus if you're constantly beating up on yourself and feeling a negative, it's only a magnet. It's just going to attract. And that seems like it's so basic. It's like, yeah, that's the basic to The Secret, and that's the basic to all these other different systems. But the interesting thing is what's often omitted is how basic something can be, but we do it all the time. Like in one level of knowledge, it talks about how there are other life forms. I mean, newsflash, there are other life forms. Okay, accept it. And some of them are in gamma rays, the gamma frequency. Some are in the infrared frequencies, and they got to eat. Just like right now, I got to go get some vegetables here in a moment. I got to go get some water here in a moment. So there's a consumption that is taking place that no matter how guilty you want to feel about it, if you're judging yourself, it's not going to stop it from happening. So what I'm driving home here is that there's other things that they need food. And what we give off, the essence of the true human being, the gym, if we get juiced, we give off in our emotional reflections, which have nothing to do with our relaxation. In our emotional reflections, we give off an orb that looks like a toroidal spiral coming right from our body when we have a strong emotional expression, especially when it's anger, when it's hatred, when it's fear. And all those things do is they consume that. And because that's their food, and that food is in a frequency range. Let's say you just gave off this gamma frequency. You can't see it. You can't see that you just gave off that energy. And anything that lives in that realm, you can't see it physically either. And this is actually what's happening. And so when we start becoming more aware, right, you'll feel it. Obviously, anyone feels the loss of energy after anger and the frustration of anxiety and all those things. So we feel that. But truly, what is it really doing? And what is it feeding into? And then so being aware of that. For sure. Actually, I guess we will be rolling into number 4 even now. And I will let everybody know, since now that we're on the train. Like the train is flowing. We're going to start connecting in these next 3 that we have, or 3 or 4 that we have, connecting how everything that we talked about in this conversation thus far, it now connects to all these maxims, because that's what I really see them as, is that, understanding, like, one, you have to be able to access that quantum field. You need to be able to relax to get into that space. 2, you have the awakened creators that they themselves have experienced the infinite, that you can't really talk about the infinite unless you've had the experience yourself, and it's life-changing. You can do it. There's no real secret to it except for being dedicated, and it will roll down your path. And then you have 3, the awakened creator lives in unleashed creativity. And actually, that is where we are exactly. So 2 was taking a long time. And that's, that does give us a great segue, because what really happens then is that if you need to accomplish something and you can't actually figure out how to get it accomplished, then you need to go around the other way, right? And so you need a lot of creativity to begin with. Unleashed creativity to me is imagination. Because, and that to me is what really evokes being able to tap into this hypothetical field for a while because, even in a lot of the depth knowledge, it really talks about how your imagination and your ability to project and your ability to imagine is what creates. And there is no limitation to what you can actually create. And it just, there's a limitation to how much you can believe in your creations. And this is the biggest thing because that controls the energetic potential. That's what the battery that you put into it. So even the ability for it to get it into this reality, it requires a lot of power, literally, to push a projection into this reality. But if you have that much power, if you've already tapped into unlimited power because you know how to relax and let those energies roll through you so that way you can begin to channel and control, there's that word again, but to be able to channel, literally channel those energies down to the right vessels. Let me explain it this way. When you eat something, it goes into its respective parts of the body. The body knows, okay, this goes to the brain, this goes to the liver, or we'll send a little bit of this to his pituitary. So it knows where to divide things and to put them. So it's the same thing with us with energy. We start to become the conduits for energy channeling into the right spaces. And not only do we do that on a physical level with our body and that connects to our spirituality, but we also do that in the reality with the things that we create. So having that unleashed level of creativity and access to that imagination, it gives you the other half of things that often can't see when you're viewing things in 2D. And what I mean by that is, that we don't see the back behind things, the way that we view things with these two eyes. Like you see only what's in front of you. So in respect that's 2D. So to be able to see the other side of an object, it takes having this extra sense, hence, the third eye, what can view it from another angle in order to actually give you the complete picture so you can finish the projection or the vision. That's what, to me, unleashed creativity is in its rawest form, is because you have a 360-degree view and access to that 360-degree view of what you're looking to create. So another way of looking at that, to simplify it for many people, because we have this way of believing that, let's say, for instance, like with the language that is created and then it's given to us. And actually, no, it's that we have evolved the language over time based on everything that was encapsulated within the experience. So this means that we're not actually using a language, that every single thing that you can articulate in the language, anything you can think of hasn't already been done or can't already be realized. So let's say, pink elephants flying across the moon on Tuesday at 5:00 p.m. with an alien riding on its back. So somebody be like, well, we know that never happened. Actually, in somebody's dream, it did. So the main point to this is that to come into the realization that there's still more stages beyond that. Like there's someone can actually harness that vision and actually ride on the back of that pink elephant and the alien in their lucid dream. And it be more real to them than even life could be real for us right now. And that's just because that's what governs it all, how much you actually believe in it, how much you actually desire it, because that's basically your own current. That's what you're spending your current or spinning your current on. And so having a high level of spin, a high level of creativity allows one to, basically spew out strange looking geometry into the reality that people will still, in some tense, believe never happened or is not possible because they're probably squares, but the geometry won't be so far off that, some other advanced being coming and look at it can't say, oh, you're using trapezoidal pentagram autonome. And we stopped using that. We're kind of just on a fractal based system now. So it's just like, having that, you got to have, that's what I mean also by that creativity, because some people say, well, that kind of imagination is fanciful. No, actually what I did was I just drove around the serious part to get back to where it connects to facts. And that's what imagination is used for. Because, if we didn't have it, then much of what we would be seeing in front of us wouldn't even exist because somebody wouldn't have ventured out to try to imagine it. But here's the thing. And, I don't want to use that word, but because it's the behind of it, but this is what we're talking about. It's the behind the scenes though is a program reality that keeps people in a safe zone. So that way they don't start realizing that it is anything you think it is. And our only output for that, how we vent or exhaust that steam that's created from us not being able to express that all the time in the physical reality is our dreams. And I find that the more a person is limited in the physical reality, oftentimes the more creative their dreams become, because it's like you press down one hole or you try to patch up something in one area, then it's going to pop out in the other. It doesn't mean that they're just going to start dreaming about fairy worlds and unicorns. They can have very intense, dark dreams. But I'm just saying, when you plug this world, the other one attempts to respond more, because it's just all energy. So when we're looking at also with our senses, when we're sending energy through our eyes, you can feel how much that takes. When you're even using your crown chakra and you're sensitive enough, you can feel how much that takes. So in certain tenses, when you want to have more energy, you can do things like cover your eyes. You can do things like plug your ears. This is how blind people often have more senses per se than most people, because they're used to utilizing extrasensory, the frontal lobe, these kind of things, in order to give them a view of what's going on. So that teaches us, once again, if we're blind in any way, then we can see in another. And that's what I was saying about, if you have that tri-merged blueprint, you're going to go mind, body, soul. If for some reason, like, man, I'm just not getting this done on my spirit, well, let's go at the body then. And then you'll find this area, as long as you know how to connect the as above, so below connection, you'll have this area that you'll say, okay, well, yeah, I could just tackle this on the physical plane. And once I get rid of that, then it'll roll over in the spiritual, and I could just knock it down and get everything in line. And boom, I'm here in harmony again. The latter, new is a strange word. New would insist that there's old, and then that kind of gets one insisting that there's a future and then a past, and then this is the slippery slope. What's actually really happening is that those spaces are just less occupied. Like, I saw fields of fuchsia colors. They were like soft pastels with very complex geometry, that meaning that it was so laced closely together. The connections and the weave and the bond between everything there was very connected. And so it didn't exist as there were more people there. It existed all as one thing, and viewers. And I was one of the viewers. And I looked into the vista, and I was basically saying, hey, why is there nobody here? And they said, because not too many people can make it to this level. So that's really what you're dealing with, is that those spaces and are there, but not too many people know how to harmonize themselves properly, realize the reward of being in a space that would be like that. And then also not, because you can't get in there if you're not it. So there's no, let's break down the domain and, let's get a huge army and storm the gates of the high frequency. None of that goes on there. So it's just, when we're ready, imagine, somebody threw all those over a mandible fractal, in 3D. And that's what, and it made a sound. It was like, but like a fluffy fan kind of, soft, fluffy fan kind of sound. I can only explain. Again, I was just a watcher. To enter into the plane, one would need to harmonize completely. And because that kind of energy for us is a little bit foreign, we need to learn how to ingest those foods. As a meat eater would need to learn how to eat some vegetables or some raw foods. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's almost like the idea of the Renaissance man, the Renaissance woman. I like to take concepts of creativity, since, we're naturally creative internally. We're dealing with an entire biological organism that you can't just pull a plug out and plug back in. So how the heck did it even get built to begin with? So, you don't get really much creativity than that in the reality, so we're sitting in it. But then there's this other part, since, we're now like on go. So there's this physical side, I believe, that people need to tap into their creativity. And that's, picking up maybe an instrument, if you play an instrument, or, changing up your wardrobe, changing up, your style, like, go get some crystals and just do some seeking for yourself to who you truly are. And a lot of people do that. I'm sure you go to Burning Man, you go to, the Vision Festivals coming up, you'll see some very eclectic people that are literally pulling out. Like when I walked in the place, I saw a fairy, I saw a Nord, I saw a Hun, and all of them were just dancing together. And it's just because, it's very interesting to when you can, because everything is extension of us. So it's like the geometry within itself of what you have around you. And what really serves you. And what I mean by that is because we have many different things that we take on as intangible or inorganic objects. a car is an inorganic object, a necklace is an inorganic object. And it's just because that's what it really is. Metals are inorganic. And in that term, it doesn't mean that it's not real. It just means that it is there. It is on another frequency. So in this frequency, it has lended itself for you to possess it, that you can have it with you. And so when we look at that kind of connection, we can find that a lot of our creativity can flow out into those inorganic geometric fields, whether it's metal, whether it's crystals, other things that we can create in order to basically, like to tighten down the fractal. Like when you look at fractals from a big point of view, right, there's that. And then as you drill in, there's those small little fringes. And I find that in the reality, the things that you develop around you in your environment, even the physical objects, become the direct fringes or extensions to your geometric style. And so this is like, when you see some of the people, especially within the 50s and the 60s and in the 70s, you saw a large flare of creativity because all of the mentors were like that. Each person was challenged to develop something original, versus, of course, now there's more of the opposite, where, you know, there's these stereotypes or archetypes that are delivered in the reality, and you need to go down those channels. And so this is how we kind of gain back the part of us that also has fun in this matrix by remembering the regalia. You know, yeah. I mean, this is a big thing. You know, this is, you know, anytime the centuries have to stand up, then everything gets serious. But, you know, adept is adult. And a big part of adult is an understanding that when you have, let's say, children, you're not going to let certain things happen to your children or certain things around your children. You know, there's this whole protectivity thing that we have, even the outside of our body is the protection, a big level of protection, our skin, right? The derma, the dream. And so the thing is that when I guess I could put it like this: are you learning your lessons? Because there's this whole side that we have to be. And that's why they say that, you know, we have two different types of creations within us. I call it fire and light, but in every tenses, they think totally different at times. And that's why you have to be the balance to make the adept or the dull decision, because let's say some people are very relaxed, and that's great to be when you're by yourself. Let's say relaxed in the sense to they don't care who's really around them and what that person is doing. They may not even have really that many objectives of what they need to accomplish. They don't even believe in that kind of thing. They just believe in going with the flow. They may have already something set up, like their own institute or something like that. So it's just kind of flowing like around their own place, right? And because there's a time and place for everything, if you set your sanctum up like that, then you want to live there, then do what you want. But when you take on certain responsibilities, like let's say, for instance, you're going to try to deliver the message to the open populace, not even to just specific group, just your open populace. Now you have to realize that, well, you're the one that said you were going to do that. So you now need to know everything that comes with that. So when you go and embark on being the creator to create things in this reality, you're accepting an immense mantle. And a part of that mantle is that you really work with protection as far as assisting others that are around you and getting information from you and experiences from you from having negative counterproductive experiences. Now, of course, things happen, so you can't beat up yourself about it. You know, the lesson in itself could be the lesson. You know, this is a very paradoxical reality. And that's actually before I even finish this part about the fields of creativity, is to also tell people the main thing that you'll see with anyone that is a real teacher is you'll often see hypocritical type of behavior and statements. And this is because the reality is a paradox. So they tell you that already. So you need to understand that sometimes when you hear things, it sounds contrary to what was said before. But the only way that we can truly assess what's being spoken is if we take it in that moment and in that context. So, you know, you kind of got to give a disclaimer to people already. And so even that statement that I just had to make was protecting what I'm saying. So that way it's like a disclaimer on the bottom. What do disclaimers do? They protect, keep this out of the reach of children. You need to still consult a physician. This is to protect something, right? Yeah, because when you create something, you become the parent of it, right? That's the whole creativity thing. And when you're a parent, you now have to protect your child. Like you can't just let your child go and namaste and go run into the street. It just doesn't work like that. So we should lose the entire concept that protection is not important. And then in addition to that, there's different types of protection. Like you even find yourself at times protecting people from you. And what I mean by that is, let's say, you have this position of authority, but maybe you get into this conflict, maybe right before your interaction with everyone, and you're still carrying that energy. An adept is going to say, okay, well, let me protect everyone from this energy that I'm carrying by canceling this event maybe, or canceling this connection until I can get myself straightened out. So there's the protection from yourself, protection of others against yourself. So this whole thing, it really is, it's building trees out of us. I won't even say it's building men out of it. It's building women out of us. It's building trees out of us. So it has this intention to take us all the way into all the responsibilities of what it takes to fully be infinite. And that's a little strange in itself when you think about it. It's like, okay, something is going to take you through the entire process of adepthood through infinity. And, so hold on to your hat then, as many people as you can get in your corner is great, but also realize that when you create something, if you're manning that ship, then you also have that responsibility to keep all the riggings in line and tight. And a lot of times somehow consciousness means laziness in many cases. So there's this lackadaisical namaste attitude that can be going on with certain people, and they're coming into something very real, something that's very, requires, a lot of attention. And they're just thinking, I didn't really get into that. If that was like, if I wanted to really work again, then I would go back to a job. But the whole idea here is that I just relax. And whoa. That's the idea that you gave this, because last time that I was really trying to do something for people, it actually required that I actually get my stuff together and do quite a few different things. So this is what I mean by, sobering up. That's what an adult is. Adult doesn't play that game. It's not playing with, how the child's going to eat for the day. It knows where the food's coming from. It doesn't have that luxury. So, oh yeah. I mean, it's a badge of honor. I mean, really, to graduate into it, but it has nothing to do with age, and, it has nothing to do with, a lot of things that we've surrounded it by, but it just has to do with being real. Because when you're being real and you're never, when you're the most real, you're the most relaxed, truly, because, you're just being yourself. So you have to actually sharpen yourself up though, and know what you're presenting to everyone, of course, when you take a certain position of authority. But after that, when you're being real, when someone does something, you can say, hey, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work. And for obvious reasons. And the person will accept that and be like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't do that. But if you are not, in the right place yourself, then you're trying to explain, well, it would be uncomfortable for you. And you have to ask another person, when should I tell them? And so all that goes on because you're just not being real. So real is a big part of that infinite side of yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And we were just discussing this a few days ago, me and some members of the team, about when you really start cycling the energy with everyone and getting everyone out of things that they don't like doing. Which is the whole big purpose of the team, is because, and like, obviously for a while, you may have to go dolo. You may find yourself wearing a lot of hats. And in that process, you'll notice there's things that you really don't like doing. And that's just for all of us. So but there's always someone where that's just their thing. And so, developing and holding in the process is also a big part of, getting the right tools even around you, and the right, I have this old segment that I did on this talk that was internal yesterday, but day before yesterday, excuse me, but it was just about productivity tools, and always how to stay on the lookout for them, because there's like a new one. It's called Koji. We always drop some productivity tools here on
how do you spell that?
It's COGI. And what this, and you can get that in any app store. You can type in Koji, audio, and then you'll find it, just so just if there's any more Kojis out there. But this Koji, what it does is, it allows you to, and this is just a simple productivity tool, but let's say, for instance, we're having a meeting, we're brainstorming, and it's, we're in this meeting for 3 or 4 hours, and several things were brought up. And then now when we're done, we'll say, okay, so you got the recording of the meeting? All right. Yeah, I got the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and review this. And then I'm going to get back with you at what I felt like were the high points in the meeting. Now, the biggest problem with this is the recording's 4 hours and you have no idea where any of those high points were. So what Koji does, and also you have a very large recording that's going to take up space, etc. So what Koji does is when you start a meeting, it's always recording. It's called buffering. It's always recording, but it's not actually recording, meaning that what's being recorded is not going to become the file that gets saved. What's going to get saved is, say about 15, you're talking and then maybe 15 or 20 seconds after an epiphany, you say, man, that was a great idea. So then someone will hit the Koji button on the phone. And what Koji will do is start going back 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. And it will grab that chunk because you'll always be able to know, yeah, we just built on that for like 5 minutes. So you go back 5 minutes, then it'll save that chunk. You'll tag that chunk. And then you tap the button again, Koji will resume the process. Now, the important part of working with something like that in a group where there's constant ideas being brainstormed, but there's also those huge segments of just improductivity that is needed to actually get to a solid idea, then you end up with just the files of the creative ideas and them tagged properly so that way you know how to sort through them. So you can immediately go right into your next process of basically giving at least everyone a bullet list of what was the main topics of what was discussed and now what needs to be worked on. Bam. So that changes things in the dynamic of a meeting and, trying to get something together. So that's just another example of honing this also this creative process with productivity and also just with anything that's around you and realizing even within your own technique, like that you can actually begin to spend the time that's necessary to maybe teach yourself something or to get better at something that you already are engaging in. So there you go. Yes, we do indeed appreciate you. I mean, it would have never gotten me this far if there wasn't at least one person that was, there and saying, hey, this is really helping me. And it shows you how much we need each other. And that's the collective, because at the end of the day, that's what Earth really is. It's when you take a bunch of Earth in your hands, it's a collective of a bunch of particles. So even there, right there, it's the true expression of what it is. It's not just one thing. And there's so many elements in there that, that you don't even really see all of it there unless you're paying attention and you look deeper. And so this has been an amazing thing. There was a certain part of something that you said in this last thing that I felt like there was something that I really wanted to make sure that we introduced during this conversation. And it's just on the tip of my mind right now. Like I was almost grasping it and then I was hearing what you were saying and then I was almost grasping it again. I was like, this is a perfect time to bring that up, but maybe, next time, or maybe I'll think about it in a moment. I do want to let everyone know that, we are continuously building. I've created some new devices. One mainly that helps you with water, because I believe that, it's very tough to purify your food. Just like, let's say, for instance, you want to purify an apple. It's going to be pretty tough because now you have to, even if it's organic, there's other water, there's bacteria, there's different things that are just on it anyway. And it's the same thing with air. There's so many particles that you're actually breathing within the air. You really need to get some altitude or get into certain areas to not have so many, dust particles, mold particles, those kind of things in your air. But hey, we get by. And there's always different qualities that we can access of those those things. But water is one of the only elements that I know that you can fully purify and fully clean, like to bring it right back into its original state. So that way you could begin to utilize water and the power of water. And so we're building a device called Phi Aqua, and that's what it does. It allows you to take a hold of your power and ability of programming water and through this device that basically uses clear water to program intentions and frequency into on an ultrasonic level. So this is a big thing. It's another, I was talking about actually also how, since I'm going through that process, a lot of what I'm going to be teaching is about, what are some of the things that I went through in the process that were contrary. Like I thought it was also going to be very difficult to create this project. And now we're very far along. And it's just because sometimes when I visualize what I'm going to do, I see myself doing the entire process, because that's just how I have had to work for a while. But then there's these things when you come to, it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And then that's what starts giving you the feeling that you are not going to be able to get it accomplished. But of course, there's other people that can do it. We talked about Upwork before. And also there's other people that can do it for a fraction of what you think it would cost. Cause somehow we equate when we can't do something that it's going to be very expensive too, to get someone to do it. And if they put that, hey, you're going to need a professional around that, then oh my goodness, we start thinking of how much professionals get paid in the US. But the truth is there's workers all around the world. They're living in different economies and they have the same level of skill set as everyone else if you know what you're looking for. And so being able to go and get your project now catted out or into some design or drafting format by someone that you may have paid $150 if that's what you've offered is possible now because those kind of tools are available to you. So, but again, if you're just thinking how you're going to do it, then it becomes almost insurmountable and, it's going to cost a lot of money and it really doesn't. So these processes I'm going through now are also, how to bring something physical into the reality completely. That's an invention or an idea. And then I plan on in the future, of course, and then even on obviously the media festival where I'll be really bringing out the jewels and the gems for that presentation. I'll be introducing yet more of these tools that I've been introduced to and how that also connects with everything. So how to create the synergy